A hiker was making his way through the dense woods of a moonlit forest as he'd done many times before. The loosely packed dirt of a trail not yet blazed gave way under his boots as he ventured late into the night. It was past midnight by this point, and the hiker desperately needed to sleep. The man knelt down and shrugged off his backpack, preparing to set up his tent, until he took note of a light in the distance. With curiosity piqued, he donned his pack once more to discover the source of the light. As he approached the offending bulb, he began to notice that it wasn't a light by itself, but an entire cottage, lit up somewhat dimly in the dead of the night. The hiker decided that he'd ask the owner of the cottage for some lodging for the night. After all, his tent could be awfully uncomfortable from time to time. However, after several minutes of bare knuckles rapping against solid oak, not a soul answered his call. He continued to knock, and knock, and knock, hoping that somebody was home. The man decided, testing the lock to see if breaking and entering was in order. To his surprise, the door gave way instantly, the hinges eerily creaking as he made himself at home in the cottage. The cottage was simple enough. There was a small kitchen that was attached to a living room which held nothing but a pull-out couch. It was fairly standard, nothing fancy, but it was better than a tent. The only thing that the hiker wasn't comfortable with was an odd sort of collection that the occupant of this cottage had, some sort of painting collection of disfigured faces that lined the walls of the room. After a few moments of curious staring and cold shivers, the man turned away from the art and tucked himself into bed for a night's rest. After a few hours of abysmal sleep, the hiker rose with an uncomfortable feeling. He felt uneasy, and stood to his feet to gather his belongings before setting off again as quickly as possible. As he packed, he stared again at the wall once more to gaze upon the odd paintings that he'd seen the night before. His heart stopped cold as he realized there were only windows. Camping at a friend's family property, we stayed up late drinking by the fire, and I was the last one awake. I needed to use the bathroom, so I went to the side of an old barn that they had on the property, and stood about 5 feet away looking inside through the window. There was a fluorescent light on, and I noticed what looked like a piece of paper or dollar kind of floating around. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds, which felt like forever. Then it quickly floated back to the corner of the shop where it was dark. There was also a wood chair near the corner that added to the creepiness. I sat back down by the fire to finish my beer and have a smoke. I noticed my friend Jay got out of his tent to look around, I guess, then go back in to go to sleep. I decided sleep sounded good, so I went to my tent and fell asleep. The next morning, we were having breakfast and Jay said, "I saw you guys sitting by the fire super late. How late did you stay up?" I told him I was probably 2 or 3 a.m. Then he said, "Who was up with you?" I told him I was the last man standing. He said, "I got up to look around and saw you on your phone and 2 people over your shoulder." He said one person looked bigger, so he thought it was one of our friends who was a bigger dude. He said the other person was taller and skinny, but none of us are noticeably tall or skinny. Freaked me out. We still camp at that property once a year, but I don't go in the barn.